Tonight, you check your bank account before you fall asleep. A small habit, a quiet reflex. You do it without thinking. Now, imagine never having to check it again, because there is more money than you could ever spend in 10 lifetimes. That was Mike Tyson's reality once. And in less than 20 years, it was gone. Not some of it, not most of it, all of it. $400 million, earned punch by punch, fight by fight, in a career that made him the youngest heavyweight champion in history. And then, bankruptcy. How does that happen? How does a fortune that size simply vanish?
You've probably heard the headlines. The tigers, the mansions, the jewelry. But the real story isn't about excess. It's about a mind shaped by scarcity, thrown suddenly into unimaginable wealth, with no map for what to do next. And that story says more about your own money habits than you might expect. Let's go back to the beginning. Tyson grew up in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood defined by poverty and violence. Money, when it existed at all, was for surviving the day, not for planning a decade ahead. Psychologists who study financial behavior have a name for this. They call it scarcity mindset, a pattern first documented by economists Sendil Mullainathan and psychologist Eldar Shafir in their research on poverty and decision-making. When resources are scarce, the brain narrows its focus to the immediate moment. Long-term planning becomes a luxury the mind simply isn't wired to prioritize.
Now, picture that mindset colliding with a 20-year-old signing million-dollar boxing contracts. There was no gradual climb, no years of slowly increasing paychecks to adjust to. One fight, then suddenly more money than his entire neighborhood had seen in a generation. What do you do with that when nothing in your life has prepared you to hold it? You spend it, because spending feels like proof it's real. Cars, homes, clothes made to order. At one point, Tyson reportedly owned 3 white Bengal tigers, cared for by a private staff. A crocodile skin bathtub reportedly cost him over $2 million. None of this was a secret. It was public, visible, almost performative. But here's the question worth sitting with. Was the spending really about the objects? Or was it about something else entirely? Financial psychologists often point to a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. You get something new, it feels incredible. Then, weeks later, it feels normal. So you chase the next thing that might bring that feeling back. For someone who grew up with nothing and now had access to everything, that chase had no natural ceiling. Where do you stop when the whole point of the money was to prove you'd escaped where you came from? But the spending wasn't even the most damaging part. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Tyson wasn't managing his own finances. He had an entourage, managers, advisors, people whose job, on paper, was to protect his money. In multiple interviews over the years, Tyson has stated that he paid enormous sums to people around him. Sums that, according to his own account, ran into hundreds of millions of dollars over his career, for services and arrangements he later felt he never fully understood or needed. Whether every figure is precisely verifiable is beside the point. The broader lesson isn't in doubt. When you don't understand your own finances, you become entirely dependent on the honesty of the people managing them. And that dependency can be as costly as any tiger or any bathtub. Think about that for a second. Does this feel familiar, even in a much smaller version? A financial advisor you never fully questioned. A fee buried in fine print. A subscription you forgot to cancel. The mechanism is the same. Distance from your own money creates opportunity for someone else to take a piece of it. Now, here comes the twist that changes how you should see this whole story. Tyson wasn't just spending recklessly. He was earning at a level that should have made bankruptcy almost mathematically impossible. Some of his fight purses alone exceeded $20 million for a single night's work. So the real question isn't why did the money disappear? It's why didn't anyone stop it from disappearing? And this is where his story stops being about boxing and starts being about something universal. Because the truth is, income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what flows in. Wealth is what stays, what grows, what compounds while you're not paying attention. You can have one without the other. Plenty of high earners live paycheck to paycheck. Plenty of modest earners build quiet fortunes. The difference isn't how much comes in, it's what happens to it after. Tyson's downfall wasn't really about tigers or gold chains. It was about a total absence of what financial planners call a system. No budget, no long-term investment strategy, no boundary between what he earned and what flowed straight back out, often to people who had every incentive to keep it flowing that direction. By 2003, it was official. Bankruptcy. Debts reportedly exceeding $27 million against assets that had, by then, nearly evaporated. A man who once commanded more money for a single fight than most people earn across an entire lifetime, filing paperwork that admitted there was nothing left. But here's the part of the story that almost nobody remembers. This isn't where it ends. Tyson rebuilt, not to 400 million, but to stability. Through new business ventures, public appearances, and a shift in how he approached money, one built on structure instead of impulse, he found solid ground again. And in interviews since, he has been remarkably candid about what changed. Not the size of his income, the relationship he had with it. So, what's the actual lesson here, stripped of the tigers and the headlines? It's this. Financial security was never really about how much you make. It's about whether you understand where your money goes and whether you have people around you who are accountable, not just agreeable. A study from the National Endowment for Financial Education has found that a striking share of people who receive sudden windfalls, whether from lottery wins, inheritances, or lump sum payouts, end up with little or nothing left within just a few years. Tyson's fortune was earned punch by punch instead of won on a ticket, but the pattern of what happened afterward looks almost identical. You don't need $400 million for this lesson to apply to you. You need it the very next time money unexpectedly lands in your hands. A bonus, a raise, an inheritance, a tax refund. The question isn't how much you got. The question is what system, if any, catches it before it slips through your fingers the way it slipped through his. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The size of the number was never really the problem. The problem was that nothing was built to hold it. So tonight, before you check your bank account one more time, ask yourself something different. Not how much is in there, but whether you actually understand every single thing that moves in and out of it. Because that gap, small as it might feel right now, is the exact same gap that swallowed $400 million whole.